Oscar nominations are just about a month away, and even though no one knows I want to give my 2 cents. I'm going to go through all of the big categories from picture to director, actor, actress, the supporting nominations, animated feature, and then grouping in all of the technical nominations at the end. Before we get into it, over 90% of you guys who watch these videos are subscribed, so if you don't want to miss out on more reviews or rankings, hit that button. And also, let me know all of your predictions for all of these over-the-line categories in the comments down below. Both don't waste any more time. Let's get right into it. So the first category I obviously want to talk about is Best Picture. This is obviously the biggest category, and there is a lot to go through here. In 10th place for me is Emilia Perez. To put it short and simple, I don't like this movie at all whatsoever. I'm really only putting it on the list because I know it is probably going to get a bunch of Oscar nominations, none of which I actually think it deserves, but it's a musical, so they're going to eat it up. The same general sentiment goes for my 9th place, which is a complete unknown, except for the fact that I haven't yet seen this film. This is really the only film in the entire video that I'll mention, but I haven't seen yet. It's had limited press screenings around the entire country. I was supposed to see it, but missed my screening, but I still do think since it's a biopic, it probably will make the Best Picture nominations at least. In 8th place for me is Wicked. This has been an absolute box office smash so far in its runtime, and I also do think that it's just a great marketing tool for the Oscars to use. It's made a lot of money, the leads and supporting, and most of the technical elements will probably get nominations as well. I think this is really a no-brainer as I guess like the big blockbuster nomination of the year. In 7th place for me is going to be Challengers. Now it's really weird to even have Challengers in this top 10 nominations because not only do I really feel like this is a shoo-in, but the only reason I'm putting it on this list is because I was going through a lot of the other categories, especially the technical ones, and I really do feel like Challengers is a lock in terms of nominations for those, so I kind of wanted to throw it in here. I used to be a certified Challengers hater, and I still don't think the film is amazing, which is kind of where I get into like my nitpicks of this whole idea of predicting Oscars, because I really do have a top 10 list of my favorite Best Picture movies of the year. A lot of these movies aren't in that top 10, but I know that the Oscars are going to really like these films, so I'm throwing it in the ranking. Closer to the Oscars, I will be doing a personal Oscar nominations where I'll be going through my top 10 Best Picture, actor, actress, supporting actor, all that kind of stuff, but just off of my actual favorite films of the year, not basing it on any Oscar merit at all. But nevertheless, in 6th place for me is Conclave. I fell asleep the first time that I watched this film at TIFF, and I 100% regret it. I got to rewatch it when it had its regular rollout, and this movie is absolutely awesome. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but it's shot really well. The wardrobe, the design, I'll talk about all of that later. In general, it is just a very wide appealing film. It's been doing absolute numbers on VOD, and just generally, I do feel like this is a really interesting concept for the Oscars to play with in terms of just what type of film this is. Getting into my top 5, 5th place for me is Nickel Boys. Now, I will say my top 4 are genuinely films in my like top 7 films of the year. Nickel Boys sits just outside of that. I genuinely did love this movie. It is such a hard watch though, but I feel like the fact that it is so ballsy in terms of what it's going for on a visual level, what it's going for on a story level. In 4th place for me is The Brutalist. I've seen over 120 films as of recording this video. I still have a lot more left, but The Brutalist and the rest of my top 4 are in my like, I'd say top 5/6. This movie is fucking brilliant. I do think at the end of the day, this one probably will take the award home, but it's not necessarily my favorite of the year, so I just feel uncomfortable giving it that number 1 spot. I have a full review on this film. It is absolutely breathtaking in every sense of the word. I don't want to spend too much more time harping on it. In 3rd place for me is Sing Sing. Now, the only reason I boosted this up my power ranking, and a lot of people have talked about this, is genuinely just because A24 seems to finally be doing a decent rollout for this film. I don't think it ever actually had a nationwide release. I think it was like early fall of this year. It premiered at TIFF last year, which is crazy to say. They are re-releasing this film nationwide in sometime mid-January, which is absolutely huge, at least in my opinion, especially when you already have Queer coming out in November, The Brutalist coming out in December. I'm really surprised that A24 took this leap. Now, what this means for The Brutalist nationwide release, I have no idea, but I genuinely do think this is a great sign for Sing Sing, which I got to see in the beginning of the summer, and it is genuinely one of my favorite films of the year. Honestly, one of my favorite films of the entire decade. I'm so excited for more people to see this film, and I will be rewatching it when it has its nationwide re-release. In second place for me is Anora. I know as a little bit of time has passed, a lot of people haven't been as big on Anora, but I personally still think it's absolutely fucking amazing. Got to see it at TIFF originally, and then I watched it 2 or 3 times after that. I also got to see it on 35mm. I think this film is going to get nominations all across the board. I think it is absolutely beautifully crafted and just overall is an amazing package. I'm a little bit worried about the marketing. It feels like they're going absolutely ham with all of the marketing right now, whereas we still have nominations coming out in January and then voting taking place through February. So I really do hope that they're still consistent with that and this just doesn't fall off the face of the earth. In first place for me is Dune Part 2. This film came out all the way back in like March, and I know it's been a long time. People might be turning their backs on this film. Do I think it's gonna win an Oscar for Best Picture at least? No fucking shot. But I think it's still one of the best, if not the best film of the year, so I'm putting it at number 1. I don't really give a shit. It's pretty much certified that this won't win Best Picture. If any of the Dune films do, it'll be the last of the trilogy, Dune Messiah, which we already know is happening, which is obviously a great sign. And I'm just kind of holding out hope that yes, this will get a nomination, but I really don't think it's gonna win anything. Even though I do think it's one of the best all-rounded films of the entire year, I still do think it'll do just like Dune 1 did, where it'll win all of the under-the-line awards, which I still think is great. That's awesome. It's a technical fucking masterclass, so that's great and all. But again, I kind of want that Best Picture win. With Best Picture out of the way, talking about Best Director, obviously I have my 5 nominations, but there are 3 I quickly do want to mention. James Mangold for A Complete Unknown. I haven't seen the film, but I have a feeling that a lot of voters are going to like that. Also, Robert Eggers for Nosferatu, another big one that I haven't seen yet. Again, those are the only 2 that I haven't seen for the rest of the years. And then Edward Berger for Conclave. Obviously, All Quiet on the Western Front did absolute numbers at the Oscars a couple years ago, so I do feel like this is in contention. In 5th place for me is Ramel Ross, director of Nickelboys. I genuinely do think that this is a phenomenal film, but also, like I said before, it's phenomenally directed. This is easily the most visually, not necessarily polarizing, but more so distinct films that has come out this year. I think this is a no-brainer for a Best Director nomination. Then we have Greg Quidar for Sing Sing. This is another one of the most visually charged yet simple films of the year. Again, another no-brainer nomination in my opinion. In 3rd place for me is Sean Baker for Anora. Now, I feel like this one for me is a lock because I absolutely love this film. But I do think there are other films that could overtake it, again, if the campaign isn't absolutely amazing. But just like Sing Sing, I think one of, if not the best part of Anora, other than the lead performances and the supporting performances and overall chemistry of the entire film, is the fact that it is so strongly directed. In 2nd place for me is Brady Corbett for The Brutalist. This is one of the most epic but also personal films of the entire year. One film that I compared it to in my full review was Oppenheimer, where obviously in terms of a runtime, in terms of a scale, what it's trying to achieve over 3 hours and like 45 minutes, there's so much happening. Yet Brady Corbett is able to make it super personal with the visual distinctions, the overall character storytelling methods. All of this lies upon him, and I think he does an amazing job with this. In 1st place for me though is Denis Villeneuve for Dune Part 2. This is probably my weakest pick. I can be self-aware about that. If any of my 5 picks aren't going to get in, it's probably going to be Denis, and if anyone gets swapped in, it's going to be Edward Berger for Conclave, which I wouldn't be mad, but I would be kind of mad. This is just such an epic sci-fi scale that I really don't think many directors of our time could handle. I think Denis Villeneuve is in like one of 3 company of directors that I genuinely think could make this film, and I think that alone deserves a nomination. So getting into actress, I have a couple of things I want to mention right off the bat. Obviously, Carla Sofia Gasson. I think that she in Emilia Perez is not good, but the Oscars are going to absolutely dick ride this movie. So I also think Angelina Jolie in Maria would probably get a nomination, but I haven't seen the film yet, so I don't want to put her in there. I do think she'll be in the mix though. And 5th place for me is Cynthia Erivo for Wicked. I don't don't really know if this nomination is going to happen. I really could see Angelina Jolie taking over this 5th spot, but I do think she's absolutely phenomenal in this film. If she doesn't get a nomination in this one, it's going to be for Wicked Part 2 next year. And 4th place for me is probably my hottest take of the entire video. I'm going to say Zendaya in Challengers. I have seen this on little to no people's lists. I just think she's absolutely amazing in the film, and I think she deserves a nomination. And then in 3rd place, we have Nicole Kidman in Baby Girl. She won Best Actress at Venice, along with Best Actress at the National Board of Review. I feel like this nomination is an absolute lock, and after seeing this film, she's absolutely amazing. Like, this movie is absolutely wild in general. Now, I don't know how A24 is going to handle doing all of this Oscar work. They need to fucking figure it out. In 2nd place for me is Anya Taylor-Joy in Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. This isn't the last you'll be seeing of this film in my rankings. I feel like a lot of people just stopped talking about this movie. It didn't really do well at the box office at all, but this is such a legendary performance in my opinion. The absolute badassery on screen. It is all just so cool. It's so raw, so visceral. I need this nomination. But in 1st place for me, and in my opinion, the runaway winner favorite is Mikey Madison in Anora. I really have nothing more to say than I already said in my review for the film. This film is absolutely fucking amazing, and Mikey Madison is the main carrying reason why, in my opinion. Getting into lead actor, my 3 honorable mentions: Timothée Chalamet in A Complete Unknown, John David Washington in The Piano Lesson, both of which, again, I haven't seen yet, and then Sebastian Stan in The Apprentice. I really did like The Apprentice, but there's no way in hell, just on any regular year, this nomination wouldn't happen, let alone on an election year. This shit is just not happening. And 5th place for me is Ralph Fiennes in Conclave. Not only do I love Conclave, but I think Ralph Fiennes delivers one of the most layered, yet also pretty chill performances of the year. Obviously, he has some like breakout moments here and there that are nuggeted throughout the entire film, but for the most part, it is a very underlying performance, which I absolutely eat up. And 4th place is Daniel Craig in Queer. I did not like Queer at all whatsoever. I have a full review on it. I was pretty much shitting on it for 4 minutes straight, but Daniel Craig is easily the best part of that film, carries it out of this world, and I genuinely think it's one of the best performances of his entire career. In 3rd place is Timothée Chalamet in Dune Part 2. Again, this is me just dick riding Dune Part 2. If anything, he's more likely to get a nomination playing Bob Dylan. In 2nd place for me is Coleman Domingo in Sing Sing. Obviously, I absolutely love this film, and not only was he my frontrunner for most of the year, he was pretty much my frontrunner until I started making this list, and then I realized the film that I'd seen about a month ago at this point, which was The Brutalist. In 1st place for me is Adrian Brody in The Brutalist, and this is a performance that really just transcends time. I wouldn't say it's as good as Cillian Murphy in Oppenheimer last year, which again is my inherent comparison because I feel like these films made me feel a very similar thing. But I do think this does do its own thing in a very amazing way. He is the absolute centerpiece of the film, not only on a physical, like we're following him, but just on an emotional level of everything going on around him is so torturous to himself, and the evolution of this character was just brilliant to watch and made the time absolutely fly by. Adrian Brody is just the core of what makes The Brutalist so fucking good. For Best Supporting Actress, 2 honorable mentions: Selena Gomez in Amelia Perez. I fucking hate that movie. But also Daniela Deadwyler in The Piano Lesson, which I have not seen yet, but I've heard amazing things about. And 5th place for me is Rebecca Ferguson in Dune Part 2. Daniela was actually in that spot. I was planning to watch The Piano Lesson before I recorded this, but Rebecca Ferguson is absolutely amazing in Dune Part 2. I actually recently rewatched Dune Part 2 on my 4K finally, and I just needed to make sure that I wasn't blinded by that March 2024 hype. And don't worry, I wasn't. I still absolutely love the film. And 4th place for me is Margaret Qualley in The Substance. I actually totally forgot about this performance until I went to go rewatch The Substance post-TIFF. I genuinely love this film. I think not only is it one of the most exhilarating films of the year, but it's one of the just weirdest movies I've ever seen. And I think Margaret Qualley, opposite from Demi Moore, is so perfect. And though I don't think Demi Moore is as great as the other lead actress nominations, I do think that that Margaret Qualley, in the competition for this field at least, is top tier. In third place for me is Felicity Jones in The Brutalist. I thought she was gonna be my #1 front runner for the longest time. Not only did I watch another movie after that, which made me change my mind, but also I was genuinely surprised as to how little screen time she had in The Brutalist. In second place for me is Ingenue Ellis Taylor in Nickel Boys. This performance absolutely ties together the film like I just didn't expect at all whatsoever. This is kind of the core reason why I think the film hits on such an emotional level. But in first place for me is Ariana Grande in Wicked. This might be absolutely blasphemous to say, and I apologize ahead of time. It's also inherently just really weird to compare a character like Glinda to anything in The Piano Lesson, Nickel Boys, The Brutalist, even Dune Part 2. These films are all super different, and Wicked in and of itself is just such a different type of film than all of these. I just think that Ariana Grande not only embodies this character so well, but just plays her with this aura that is super exciting, exhilarating. It adds a lot of like lift to this film, but also in serious moments, you aren't just like, oh, it's Ariana Grande. You know, you see the character. Getting into supporting actor, a couple honorable mentions. Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice. Absolutely love him. Super exciting to see him on the big screen, but again, situations are situations. I don't think this is getting a nomination. Stanley Tucci in Conclave was also amazing. Again, I just think the competition's too strong. And Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2 was surprisingly amazing. I genuinely do think he carries a lot of this film on his back, at least more than what I expected going in. I do think he could make it in these nominations if one of my 5 gets snubbed. In fifth place, and I'm gonna pronounce this completely wrong, is Yura Borisov in Anora. I think this performance is absolutely amazing. I would put it higher on my list, but I just don't think he has enough of a, I guess, like, current story impact. He's not evolving with the story like a lot of these other characters are. But in fourth place, and I think this is my personal shoe-in, this is where I think Denzel Washington or Stanley Tucci could get in, is Chris Hemsworth in Furiosa Mad Max Saga. Not only have we never seen Chris Hemsworth in a role like this, we've really just never seen such a flamboyant villain in modern blockbusters, which I absolutely love for him. I really want to see him tackle more of these things in his career. In third place for me is Guy Pearce in The Brutalist. I think this is another thing of there's not as much screen time, at least in ratio to what the overall film is trying to do, but I think there are just some phenomenal character moments and just overall situational things that are going on in the film that really do elevate his character, and all of those things are just put to screen perfectly by Guy Pearce. In second place for me is Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain. I hope the Roy boys get nominated for Best Supporting Actor together, but I don't really know if this one's gonna happen either. This performance really just hit home for me. A Real Pain overall was much better than I expected, and in my opinion, this is probably the only category that it's really gonna get into. But in my opinion, the absolute front runner for this category is Clarence Macklin in Sing Sing. This is one of the best performances of the year. Like not even limiting it to this category. This is one of the most emotional, touching stories of just like what the shit this guy has gone through in his entire life, and then leading him to a film like Sing Sing. And I wish all the success for this guy, and his performance just proves that over and over. Now, before getting into all of the technical awards, I do want to talk about Best Animated Feature. I've seen 5 out of the 6 biggest animated or most popular animated films of the year. In 6th place is Piece by Piece, which I really just don't like at all whatsoever. In 5th place for me is actually Moana 2. I really did enjoy this film, but I just think it's basic Disney animated film. It's gonna make buckets of money at the box office. That doesn't mean it's absolutely amazing though. In 4th place is Flow, which I just watched for the first time. I don't really think it's amazing, but I do think on a technical level, the animation is absolutely gorgeous. In 3rd place is the only film I haven't seen. I started it, I've heard amazing things about it. It was just way too sad and I didn't want to watch it that day, is Memoir of a Snail. I genuinely do think that this has a high chance of winning Best Picture just because of how uniquely distinct it is on a technical level, but also really just the thematic heft of what this film is trying to say, especially compared to all these like slightly more lighthearted DreamWorks or Pixar films. And second place for me is Inside Out 2. This is one of, if not the most successful films of the year so far, let alone it being a Pixar movie, let alone it being a Pixar sequel. I think this one has a good shot at winning Best Animated Feature. And first place for me though is The Wild Robot. If you told me when I had originally seen this film at 9 a.m. at TIFF and I was crying my eyes out that this was going to be my #1 pick for Best Animated Movie, I wouldn't have believed it. It is miles ahead of every single one of the other films. Genuinely just an amazing film on a technical level, but also an emotional level. For me, this is the best animated film of the year so far. And then to quickly breeze through all of the technical awards, I don't want to spend too much time on all of these because I've already talked about all of these films. For Best Cinematography, honorable mention, Challengers, and 5th place is Conclave. 4th place is Anora. 3rd place is Nickel Boy. 2nd place is The Brutalist, and Dune Part 2 is in 1st. Editing, honorable mention, Conclave. 5th place, Civil War. 4th place, Challengers. 3rd place, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. 2nd place, Dune Part 2, and 1st place, The Brutalist. Production design, 6th place, Gladiator 2. 5th place, Monkey Man. 4th place, The Brutalist. 3rd place, Dune Part 2. 2nd place, Conclave. 1st place, Wicked. Visual effects, honorable mention, Mufasa the Lion King. 5th place, Wicked. 4th place, Gladiator 2. 3rd place, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. 2nd place, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. But in 1st place is Dune Part 2. Sound, some honorable mentions, A Complete Unknown, Gladiator 2, and Nickel Boys. 5th place, Monkey Man. 4th place, Challengers. 3rd place, The Brutalist. 2nd place, Dune Part 2. And 1st place is Civil War. But guys, that wraps up my initial Oscar predictions. Excited to hear all of your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.